So we're talking this month about empathy. We introduced it in our earlier session a couple of weeks ago. I'll quickly revise that for us today so that we've just sort of level setting, and then we can dig into some of the nuances around this topic. I'm sure be very interesting to see what comes out. I've got some things to share that I'm really curious to brainstorm with you guys and get reactions to them. So let me just call up the slides and we'll get to work.
I have a question too, if there's time at the end.
Okay. All right. So this is our topic, and I know we do a PPI check-in, but I'm going to do that in a second with you as we go through this. So just to quickly refresh the flow of what we went through last time, so everyone's back on the same page. And again, these slides will be sent out with the recording at the end of the day with whatever upgrades we make to the slides from the session today. So this is what we were talking about, the difference between, or what is empathy, the difference between emotional, intellectual empathy, and basically the impact of our ID in the empathy space is what we're digging into. Then we talked about why does it matter in the workplace? And I think this was pretty obvious to most people, but it was just a good reminder that, but especially in today's age where we're working virtually, and there's a lack of there's a lack of physical connection. Those water cooler conversations don't happen as automatically as they used to when we worked physically together. And so not only is there a lack of connection, but when you don't have that human touch, there is sort of by inference then an effect on empathy that people feel from others. In some cases, people don't even know another person's story. We now have the situation occurring where people are leaving employers where they've never actually met anyone physically that they actually worked with, you know. So it's a pretty important thing from a leadership point of view to be more aware of and to lean into. We talked about the connection with ID, and this whole point about it helps you, not only helps you understand someone else, but probably from an empathy point of view, the most important thing is that the other person feels like you get them. That's the feeling that they live with. And when they get that feeling from you, that you get them, the guard goes down, they feel safer to open up and speak their truth and be more authentic with you. And you know, therein, at that emotional level, starts the empathy conversation and empathy experience, probably more the point. So this is where I want to bring the PPI in, because one of the comments when we talked about what are some sort of fundamental principles for being able to show empathy and be a more empathic leader, the very first thing was get in stride. Because if you're not in stride and being true to yourself, what comes out is your own anxiety, your own stress. It's all about you. And if you're going to be truly empathic, it's going to be more about the other person. And so we had a number of principles around what you can do before we even dig into understanding ID. What can you do to be in your best possible place to be giving of empathy to other people? So let me check for how we are today. Let's just do our peak performance check-in, and you can put your scores in the chat. Just, you know, and we call them out and talk to these in a minute. And I have some questions about this for you as well. As to where would you say you are today on our peak performance scale? If 10 out of 10 is being really in stride and a 1 out of 10 is way out of stride, what's your score today? Wow, some high scores here. Wow, this is one of the highest we've seen, guys. I don't think I've ever seen so many 9s. It's fantastic. Well, congratulations. You don't get to 9 by accident. You know, you get to 9 by understanding yourself and knowing what you need to be in stride, and then actually taking care of those things, whether it's the way you start your day with exercise or meditation, or what you eat, what you wear, the way you begin the work element of your day. You know, it's like taking control of that and doing what you know works best for you. So can I just ask, is there anyone along those lines that, you know, today, when you think back just on today, this number that you're experiencing, did you get there with intention? That's what I'd like to know, is who's done it from a place of real intention and actually, you know, literally did some things to make sure that they started off on the right foot. It'd be good to understand maybe what you did and how that relates to your ID. Please take yourself off mute before you share.
Well, Paul, I was chuckling because I am very intentional. great workout, good diet. I'm happy to be in a good rhythm. And then you ended up by saying the clothes you wear. And I said, that's not me. But I said, wait a second. I'm wearing a new pair of shorts and they're super comfortable. I wonder if that had something to do with it too.
Okay, so where it does, Cliff, and we probably don't talk about this a lot, but authenticators are really into comfortable. They want things to be comfortable. There goes Alona.
Yeah.
It's got to be, it's not about, yes, you might like things to look good, but you can't stand it if they don't feel. I guess it's the physical text, the texture of it all. It's got to feel comfortable. And so that maybe would be a part of it.
Yeah, it could be. It was a good chuckle there. I was checking off the things that you were listing. I was like, yep, 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 yep.
Right.
Clothes, no. Oh, wait a sec. Yes.
Well, the reason
I have to say, Paul, those of us who use Authenticate and use Improvise, we want them to be comfortable and look cute. Let's just be clear.
So which I will just say doesn't mean if you're in Avoid Authenticate, you want them to be uncomfortable and look good. But
as long as I look good, that's all that matters.
Probably wouldn't affect my PPI. But the reason I asked the question is because I was thinking in preparation for today, I'm sure we'll see a lot of 8s, and that's normally seen as a good score, and we sort of leave it alone and keep moving. But what would you need to get to 9? I think 10 is a bit of a, the stars have to line up to be a 10. I don't know that we've seen people like be consistently every day to 10 by their own design. I think there are some things that need to line up a little bit like winning events at sport. You can train your heart out. You can be good on the day, and you need that little bit of luck to sort of get over the line. So, but a 9, I think you can get to 9 very consistently, but it takes that, conscious intention to do it. And when there's as many people here, I'm guessing that there's been some actual, things that you've done to get there. So thanks for sharing, Cliff. Anybody else? Ben, I'm gonna mention you. We haven't seen you for a little while. It's always great to see your face come on the screen, and it's great, particularly for when someone is 70 in Verify, who normally would be quite hard on themselves and a hard, marker, like such a high standard. It's so cool to see you at a 9. Is it can you think back on something you've done with intention to get there, or is it the effect of other things that are just occurring around you?
Sorry, Paul, just checking that you're talking to me then.
I am.
Yeah, I think being deliberate with engaging with people. It's funny, I've had some conversations recently with people and mentioned the fact that, in my younger days, I was very much an introvert. And so once I got into my career, I had to be deliberate about kind of stepping out of my own comfort zone and out of my skin to engage with people. And that's kind of been a lifelong journey in my career. And so now where I am in my career is I get energy out of engaging with people. So if I sit in my office all day behind a computer, I'd actually start to feel pretty low on energy. But being deliberate and getting out, engaging with people, and I always get surprised by people's responses to simple questions and conversations. So I think that's what gives me energy. Where I dock myself a point or two in the peak performance indicator is I always struggle with sleep on a continual basis, and so talking about energy balance, that's my challenge in life. So that's where I always take a point, if not 2 points off. It's just around my energy, but it's deliberate engagement with people that gives me the juice.
That's really great. Thanks for sharing that, Grant. Now that you realize that, is it still an effort to pull yourself out from behind the desk to go and mix with people? Even though it's going to be good, I'm wondering whether it's a little bit like going to the gym, like when the alarm, I just said to Susie earlier, when the alarm went off this morning, I'm like, man, it's hard to get out of bed, but I still go and I want to do it, and and I love it and all of that. It's not like it's become so good that it's easy to get started. And I'm wondering whether for you, there's still that part of you where it's an effort to maybe start, but it's going to be so beneficial that you then overcome that and go and do it, or has it become so natural that it's easy to even get started now?
No, 100%. I think there's days where it comes easy, and there are days where I literally, it's like wearing your gym gear to bed to make, give yourself that added advantage. It's the same thing, same concept for me in that respect. It's there are times where I could quite easily just stay away from people, to be honest. But I know it's great for my own, my own well-being and my own, purpose in life, to be honest.
No, good for you. Well, I think, see, the reason I raise it, a lot of people can say, well, it's easy for you. You know this about yourself, you know what you need, or, you've been doing it for a while. It's like, no, I still have to like flick myself over the line and get going, but I at least know what I need to do that. And I know the benefits are going to be strong enough that it's worth, it's like the getting out of bed when you feel like sleeping in. You still do it because you know what's coming beyond that. You've now got that awareness, and good on you, because it's not just that you're living the best life you can now, being more in stride, but everyone around you benefits from that. And, like what you're vibrating energetically is really terrific. Even coming onto a call like this, it's good energy that influences everybody else. But of course, moving into our topic today about being more empathic, it doesn't mean that because, you have a high PPI score, you are automatically going to be showing empathy to others, but at least you're setting yourself up for it in a nice way. You're doing what the first thing, you're not sort of from behind the 8 ball when you're in a good place.
I appreciate the feedback. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions about PPI scores here today?
Paul, I had a thing flash through my head when you said put your score up, and you saw there's a lot of high scores. And I normally wouldn't share something this real, but my head went, why I'm a 9, I says, yes, because I've given up all hope, or don't give a rat's is what I said. And then I thought it was flippant. And then I realized, no, it's actually quite profound that by not giving a damn, what I mean by is the perception I have of what others have a perception of me, and not worry. My attention is not on me, but on out. And you made the comment that you don't, when your score is low, you got to really look after yourself. And I went, that's the attention. That whole point of that is that I'm good, nothing to see here. What else can we do to learn, play, have some fun? And for me, the phrase was, I don't give a shit, right? And I'm sort of talking to me, but it sounds like I'm talking to the world. But it doesn't. What you think of me is none of my business. What can I do to connect better? So I think the 9 just comes automatically whenever I'm not thinking about me.
Okay. So Greg, can you just expand? We often talk about the avoid authenticates are really driven by perception, and particularly what other people think about them. How does it play out for a strong authenticator, given what you just shared?
Well, that I didn't give them the whole truth, or that I was phony in one way or another. That my perception when I lose it is that they didn't get me, that they misinterpreted. I was trying to do something good, and I wound up putting my foot in it, and I said, no, I was trying to help. And that worry that I didn't do what I was there to do and deliver what I was there to deliver, that's like, why am I breathing? So that it's from me not being able to deliver, basically.
Right. That makes sense, but it's consequential. It's the effect of something you've done. Whereas for an avoid authenticate, it's got nothing to do with anything you've done. It's just a perception issue.
That's why we never really get you. Might love you, but don't get you.
Now I'm just trying to click. Oh, here we go. So let's move on with the rest of these principles, and then we'll dig into the empathy to do with ID. So gratitude and acceptance is just a great mindset, and servant leadership, so that you're in service of others, and you can feel from that it's all about the focus is out, not in. So get in stride so it's out. Think of yourself as grateful and accepting, because that's that point about not trying to change everything and preoccupy, because then it's about yourself, being service of others. I love this principle of being really present with your agenda off, focused on the other people, and in that place of appreciation, and then aware of your own bias when you're talking to how you're hearing others, how you're reacting to them. And that's what we're about to dig into now. All right. So when it comes to ID, we present a lot of our tools are in the space of in the shape of these matrices. So this is just a slide that I included. We're not going to spend time on it today, but I'm going to include it in the deck. because I think it's just a really nice way of refreshing yourself based on your strongest drives as to what is it about you and the way that you show up when you're in stride and it's flowing through you. That's what I think about when people talk about being in flow. It's not just that you're in flow with what you're doing and things come more easily and don't take as much energy. It's that energy flows through you. The goodness of you flows through you to other people, and this is what they experience of you. So these bullet points here, they came from talking to other people about how they observe certain drives. So if you were a completer, for example, what is it that you really cherish and admire about avoid complete people? And this is this in theory, this is what people actually say. So if you see something on here that relates to your drive, and it might be an eyebrow raiser. You might, like if you were a strong improviser and you come across as seemingly invincible, or even the one about the constant flow of ideas, and you go, but everyone gets ideas. It's like, no, not like you do, and these are the things that people cherish. So I think just to be in that place of confidence and knowing your power and influence, and maybe looking for your empathy through these things, because these come naturally to you. I included it because I just think it's a good reminder of the value of who you are. Any comments here before we move on? And I'm especially interested if there's any reaction to what this does for, thinking of these things, what that does to put you in a better peak performance place and be positioned to give better empathy. Okay, I'm going to move into the body of today, which is talking about, like, we had two slides I'm going to go through. One is empathy strengths, and the other one is the equivalent in vulnerabilities. So what you see here, the black is what we had at the start of the last class, and the blue is what was added in because of the contributions from the class. And I've done the same thing on the other slide. So you might see, if you say, Greg, you might remember the phrase you raised this about Vera. One of the things that is one of her favorite phrases, there is no present like the time. I think that's such a cool thing when you think about the gift that, she would be giving to other people before she even opens her mouth or does anything physically, patting someone on the back or putting them around, just giving them her time in a way where they feel like they genuinely have your time is the gift. Is one of the gifts, right? That's such a huge piece, because there's other people that feel like they want to show empathy, but they're giving off the vibe of, I really don't have much time at the moment. You sort of caught me a bit unawares, but I want to be there for you, but, and it doesn't make the other person feel like they can really open up. Now, is there anything here, any comments, questions, additions?
Paul, yeah, I'd like to add something to the use complete that I find just so special. And that is their drive to make sure that people are tucked in, that they're good, that they come back with. I remember when I first started learning about ID several years ago, and I was having lunch with two people that were use complete, and we were sitting at the table, and the waitress hadn't come over with the waters or the menus. And one of them looked over at me and they said, this is what the world is like with the use complete. I won't be comfortable until we're taken care of and that we have some comfort here. And I just think that that's such a special nuance about use complete.
Beautiful, Pam. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's so true. And the thing I would add is it's tucking the people in now and later.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a void complete. Like, I'm just thinking to myself, I can think of things in the moment to tuck them in, but once I move on from that lunch, I've moved on. But it's the completers that will check in this afternoon, tomorrow, a week from now, going, so how did that go? And often I can be thinking, how did what go? Like, I've moved on, even if it was about me. They're checking in on me, and I'm like, what are we talking about? Remember you said, and I'm like, oh, and it's like, then I feel bad because, like, it obviously was a big deal to them enough to check in, and I'm sort of blowing it off like that wasn't a big deal, but it was probably in the moment. That's a great point. I'll add that into the slide, Pam.
Paul, can I just add to that? I think with the spontaneity, avoid complete. I think the other thing about that though is when we do, people like us avoid complete do see that we need to follow up or check in with people or whatever, we get on and do it straight away. And then people don't feel left out and forgotten, because rather than planning it and thinking, oh, I'll do that tomorrow or the next day, what I find is like, oh yeah, I need to check in with that person. I haven't done it for a while. So I jump online or I'll jump on the phone and do it immediately. So it may seem like for you and I that we've forgotten, but for other people, I think often they go, oh, thank you so much for checking in. So they don't get that we may have forgotten until that moment. So
Yeah.
I think that's often not a benefit, a benefit, whatever that is, but yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I was going to ask the group if there was anything else you see for the avoid complete drive, because it's such a common drive, both in this team and in so many of the teams we work with, and yet we don't have as many elements here for the avoid complete drive. And I wonder if there's anything that you see about yourself if you're avoid complete, or that if you are a completer, what is it you would see about avoid completes in terms of their showing of empathy to you?
Well, again, it's my strongest drive. So I'm a 2. And so you've spoken to the spontaneity piece. I think there's a flexibility piece too, where I know in Australia, you guys have that saying of no drama. It's a little bit like we're flexible so that when things change, I believe we have a way of comforting people. Like, it's fine, no worries, we can change it. So that flexibility when things don't work out, I think we bring a comfort to that because we just don't stay in it very long. I don't know how you put that into words, but.
Thanks, Pam. Thank you.
That just made me think of something too, because I think what I really appreciate is I tend to dwell. And so part of that moving on quickly, Pam, is I really admire that you guys can just move on so quickly and not dwell on something or be able to move quickly off from that and on to the next.
But Michelle, how does that help you? I know that's one of the talents of the avoid complete drive, but how does that help you from an empathy point of view? So if Pam was doing that for you, you're having this conversation and she doesn't dwell, what is that how is that empathic to you?
Well, I think it helps in like getting you out of the mindset. It helps you in moving on as well, because it's the empathy of, I understand I understand what you're going through. Now, here's how maybe it's like they can easily see how to move on and help you see how to move on, then help you work through how to move on or move forward, I should say.
Get out of the rut?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who else? I think Greg.
I'm just going to say the other side to that. That actually, though, sometimes because avoid completes do move on really quickly. Yes, it can be helpful, but sometimes it also makes you feel like you're not being heard, or that you're being dismissed. So that's just another point of view.
I was thinking the same.
But that's not necessarily a strength. I'm just sort of pointing out that, a lot of the time you can, if you've got my ID, for instance, you can feel like, the downside is that, I go over things again and again and again, and it can drive, people crazy. Like maybe my husband, that's a 3 in this drive. But for me, it feels like I haven't got it all out. Or it's not discussed, or it can. So it doesn't feel very empathetic is what I'm saying.
Well, the empathy piece that I'm bringing in here, and I probably didn't express it, I used an avoid authenticate way of explaining, is more around if something doesn't work the way it was supposed to, there's something about, oh, it's okay, we can just do this. So there's not that dwelling in what didn't work. We can just move on quickly. And from my perspective, maybe that helped people to feel like, okay, it was all right, we made a mistake, but we can move on from it. That's
Yeah,
me.
yeah, I agree. I think that what we do is, and it may be by accident, we don't have a judgment on, oh no, our expectations didn't get met. What are we gonna, oh, poor me. We just go, okay, this is this now. What do we need to do with this now? And in fact, we're now excited because it has changed. We go, oh, beauty, what can we do? And that gets misinterpreted as being flexible and open, but it's just us going, oh, good, a new beginning. And I think that's the gift we bring unconsciously, that we go, okay, so now what? And that's actually exciting for us, and it turns out comforting for others.
So,
I
so can I check?
Sorry.
Is it? I mean, that's the view of the avoid completes, and I don't disagree with the theory of it. I'd love to hear from Amanda or someone like that who's a completer as to, does it? You know, is it empathy for them? Because that's the nuance here. Amanda.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think it is, but only once you've allowed us time to process what's happening, and we are then ready to move on. I think maybe that's what Vicky was saying. Sometimes, and I have this with my husband, is he's like, okay, we can do this now, and that's okay, no, don't worry about us. And I'm like, no, hang on a second. Like, let me suffer for 2 minutes because I had a certain expectation. It's not being met. I'm frustrated. I'm telling you, it matters to me. And if you want to just jump on to doing something else, I feel like I'm not being validated. Like what I'm feeling doesn't matter. And I know that's not what it is, you know, but it's just like, okay, sit here with me and go, oh yeah, that sucks. You know, dinner is now at 7 p.m. instead of 8. Oh man, that must have destroyed your plan today. Like, just bear with me for a second and then go, but it's okay. What we can do is, you know what I mean? Like, just wait for us to be ready to move on, I would say.
We love you, Amanda.
I was just going to say, Amanda, I love you, and thought that would be wrong. So I just wrote, oh my God, Amanda, yes. But that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, Amanda, I love you. Yes,
Yeah.
it's exactly how I feel.
But
Yeah.
this is, I mean, I love this, guys, because this is what the masterclass, like the nuances of, it's a strength, and what Greg and Pam and that were sharing, it is one of the strengths of that drive. And from an empathy point of view, for the person on the other end, if they're a completer, there's a nuance about it. Like they still appreciate that strength after you've let them like process it and really stay in that space for a little bit according to their need. I mean, that's a beautiful refinement of that piece. And I think that's you know, it's right on for empathy as opposed to strengths. Thank you.
I think.
Do we need to spend more time here, guys?
I just put a note in there about, you know, I mean, we help each other, don't we? So it's not only about helping other people who are opposite to us, it's also helping people who have a similar drive to us. So that's where I think in the note I just put in the chat, where avoid completers can help other avoid completers get out of that pit and move on. And so I think it's also about appreciating what we can do for people with a similar profile to us, not just what we can do to help people with a different profile to us.
100%. And I think when I heard that, when I heard Pam talking about, you know, helping people get out of the rut type thing, I'm thinking, yeah, well, that would be true for me. And then I'm like, well, hang on a sec, just because it's what we see in avoid complete, how does a completer see that? And I could see, you know, like the reaction of Vicky and Amanda and so on, where it's like, well, there's a but to this, you know.
If I can just add what Joe was saying, is sometimes if I have something that's frustrating me or hasn't gone according to plan, I'll usually talk about it with my brother first, who's got a similar idea. But then I have to find the right point when he's starting to make me think too much about it and, you know, be negative. And then I'm like, okay, thanks, that's enough. Now I'm gonna go to Joe and get him to help me see what's next. And so they're both having empathy, but in a different way, which is cool.
Yeah. And there's a big piece here, and I feel like we maybe there's some nuance here as well around the whole thing about expectations, you know, because one of the gifts of, I mean, Completers very much work to expectations because that's part of the path, the track. They want to make sure they're not letting people down. That's the harmony piece as well. And the avoid complete drive, it sort of almost hates expectations because it blocks freedom, So there's something in here around the gift they give from an empathy point of view, of like what I heard Pam and Greg saying was, we don't get hung up about the fact that expectations weren't met or they were missed. And I'm wondering whether there's something else about it as well, whether it's from a judgment point of view, some other nuance about not holding on to expectations.
Hi, Hitesh here. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Hitesh. Thanks for dialing in.
Yeah, sorry, I had some technical difficulties. So being a high complete, I personally believe empathy for us is give us a commitment and that you need it or need this to be completed and just leave it to us. And being a high completion because we pay attention to minute details, that helps in connecting with other people and starting conversations and using the minor details from previous conversations to enrich a conversation and establish solid relationships. So that I think is a very strong point at times for high completers. And yes, like Amanda mentioned, it is very difficult to let go, but it is also okay to but you have to, like, we need a moment. Yes, we can switch context, but we can't just switch context with avoid completers. Like I have an avoid completer who say, okay, if you say something this, they're talking about it. And if you say something about another topic, they're talking about that. For us, it's okay. You are now switching context, you are switching topics. Let's close on that first and then go to the next one, right? That's how as a completer I worked on. So for me, empathy is okay, let's finish one and then maybe pause or stop, but let's not immediately jump to other.
So you're raising some really good points here, Hitesh. The first one I wrote down was a completer feels empathy when they're not getting checked up on and they're trusted to just get something done, because if it's on the plan, then they will get it done, they will deliver, and the checking up shows that you don't really get them. So that's, by virtue of fact it's therefore not being empathetic. And the second one was not interrupting them while they're trying to get something done shows empathy as well. That's a really good point.
Other thing I would rephrase it a little, Paul. High completers will automatically provide a status update. No one needs to check with them. You will see in their communication saying, "Hey, you have requested this. Just FYI, maybe it is a one-liner. I'm still working on it." Yeah, so there is no need to check on them. It automatically happens.
So we could extrapolate this out for all 8 directions to say, by proactively meeting other people's ID needs, you are showing empathy. Because it shows so I'm just thinking now, as a verifier, if you give them the data so they can read through it in advance and get really prepared, that shows empathy to them because you get them enough to do that. If you come at things with brainstorming and new ideas and looking for how you can make things go forward, that can-do attitude, that shows empathy to an improviser. They'll feel that from you because you're meeting their need, as just as examples, right? So I think that's a really good generic strategy where you can use ID across the board to say, well, based on their ID, what do I need to do for them? And the meeting of their needs shows empathy. Great point. Thank you, Hitesh. Very good contributions. Anybody else? There's some good additions there. We'll put them into the slide. So I want to move over now to the next slide, which is the vulnerabilities. And I've already got one to add, which is the one you raised, Vic, about moving on too quickly. Maybe we've got that. Being too quick to react. Maybe I'll just maybe reword that a little bit so that we capture the point that you made. But this is what we had last time, and I've added in blue were the additions, but we didn't, we sort of ran out of time to really spend much time on this slide. So from my recollections, we didn't actually show this whole slide. I just added the things in blue from what came out, you know, just organically in the conversation that we had. So just let's dig into this slide. So these are like the blind spots or vulnerabilities of the different drives. And this is just as a slide to get our conversation started. I'm sure we can add a bunch more things to this as we go through the rest of our session today. I'd like to sort of start though with the improvised drive, given that that's the one we often run out of time on, because there were some really interesting points being made in the last call, particularly to the avoid improvise drive. And it was a new insight for me. And I want to run it by the group here and see what, like really unpack a little bit, because it was quite significant around empathy. And so I'll just introduce it this way. What I heard was part of the talent of the avoid improvise drive is that they don't get emotional about things. They don't get hung up, you know, into the drama. I'm thinking particularly, and sadly, we've just had this experience in Australia where, you know, with the tragedies over the last weekend, the first responders, how they reacted, you know, if they were to get all emotional about it, they're almost clinical in the way that they were able to put their own needs, their own emotions to one side and do their job based on how they were trained to do it. So they almost take the emotion out of it. And whilst that's a strength in that moment on the one hand, and the strength of that ID, when you look at that through the lens of empathy, taking the emotion out of it is almost the opposite of empathy. And I wonder what that really then means for empathy. And what I wonder is the very last, where was it? Yeah, really the last point is, no, sorry, the second bullet point here in blue is it's more about maybe you absorb the emotion, but you don't necessarily show it back, right? And so this is really huge, because when I think about the PTSD that's like massively occurring, you know, for so many people that are in that space, I'm thinking about that poor policewoman who, you know, first on the scene, deals with it all so incredibly, and she looks like a hero. And yet if she is avoid improvise, and there's a very good chance that she is, having worked with so many of those people, you know, there would be incredible emotion stirring inside of her, but not necessarily being projected externally. And so I'm wondering whether people with this drive might look like they're not showing empathy because their talent, if you like, is to take the emotion out. But that doesn't mean they're not feeling or churning even an enormous amount on the inside, but then what's happening with that? And so that's what I'd love to unpack with you guys today, to better understand that and hear that from avoid improvisers, because I'm sure avoid improvisers wouldn't like to hear that they lack empathy, but maybe there is some truth about the lack of showing of that. I don't know. I'm asking the question, but the other sort of element is then, and so what is going on inside you? Because you may be feeling it and absorbing it, but where's it going externally? You know, and if not, I can see where this element adds to a lot of the PTSD issues that we're seeing, like I think increase exponentially in so many areas. I mean, look at mental health today, and where I think there's some really, you know, significant areas in the avoid improvise world. I mean, having worked with so many, you know, paramedics and people, you know, military and so on, there's so many, like the most common drive there is avoid improvise.
Well, I can say from avoid improvise being my strongest driver, it is very much, I feel like I don't show empathy well. I not outwardly, but I feel it very deeply internally.
Yes.
But I also take a while to process feelings. So I'm also, you know, I mean, I see Amanda nodding and you're a 1, so you're even further than me. So you go away, you think about it, and you're processing your feelings. And then I feel like maybe that's why we have a hard time showing empathy in the moment, but then we can come back and have deeper conversations, is how I feel.
Well, that's
Process.
consistent with sort of what I'm saying, Michelle. I'm wondering if that's what others,
Yeah.
like people like Amanda and Vicky and whoever else might be, why that way is that how they see it too? Is that how they see themselves?
Yeah, I would agree with Michelle. I think in the moment I'm not great in showing empathy, but I'm definitely feeling what the person's going through, and I'm taking it all in. And I'll think about it. And sometimes if I had a difficult conversation with someone I really care about is going through something difficult, I won't actually process that feeling maybe until even a couple of days after, and then I'll find myself really emotional and I'll stop and think, or I'll be crying and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember speaking to my brother about that and I wonder how he's going, and I'll feel it. But in the moment it's almost as if I'm like, yeah, I don't know, it could be my upbringing as well, or the fact that as avoid improvisers we just carry on, like we just get through stuff and we're like, you know, just do it, doesn't matter how difficult things are. So maybe we just want to show that strength, and if you're a verifier as well, then we want to try to solve the problem and try to give solution. So yeah, definitely agree with Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda.
Cool.
Can I just ask, is that a protection or a self-protection thing, possibly, rather than, or is it really that you need that time and space? I mean, I guess it depends on which angle you put it on, but for me, it sort of sometimes looks like that's the way people manage their own professionalism, and that's what's expected if we come back to expectations, but also is it something that you use as a protection because it really is impacting you so deeply? That's something, another slant to put on it or something, I guess maybe.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure if that's ID related, but it's kind of a way of trying to keep myself removed from the situation and try to keep my distance from that, from what's happening, to protect myself so that I don't feel like that or so. Yeah, definitely.
Could it be, I have a hypothesis here, I may be completely wrong, maybe Amanda and Michelle could comment on that one, but they are maybe people who are avoiding improvise, they are aware that emotional responses is going to require some time and the situation demands a faster reactions or faster actions, and they find it easy to hold off their emotions, like they don't, yeah, I understand that this might be painful, this might be dreadful situation, but I want you to get you out of here, right? I want to help you to a better position or to a better situation, and that's maybe that is that is how they are able to absorb the emotion. I'm just using an hypothesis based on my experiences with certain individuals. Yeah.
Well, yes, that may well be the case, Tesh. I think what it'd be interesting to hear from other people who experience that about avoid improvisers. I can say for myself, just knowing that's what's happening would be helpful. Like even if someone just said, I'm hearing you, I need to process this, to really connect with you, or I'm knowing me, I'll feel this really deeply, but I need to process it. So if I'm coming across not showing empathy now, it's only how I'm coming across, like I'm feeling this deeply. And just knowing that or being reminded of that, you don't have to do anything more than that, but just, you know, explain it. That would help enormously.
But then are we then trying to change the way people behave naturally to a situation, or we are just giving tips to you help them, okay, your body is behaving this way, you are not showing any emotions or stuff, but now that you understand the score and maybe you may want to communicate verbally using certain phrases.
Well,
So
I suppose the challenge is that in the moment, I'm just using myself as an example. If I was the one requiring the empathy, I'm not thinking about your score and I'm thinking about me, you know. So even with all my knowledge of ID, it would be still really helpful to just be reminded of this is where I'm at. Otherwise, it's like you're talking to a blank face and you don't know like what's that person thinking or feeling. And just to be reminded of that would really be helpful. But I'm before we get into that element so much, I really, if this is a relevant piece for the Avoid Improvise, it'd be good to then hear from how does that affect the improvisers, like from an empathy point of view, and maybe even other Avoid Improvisers. To Joe's point earlier, what's the effect when you are sitting there processing it, so you're not maybe giving back that feeling of empathy straight away? Is it a big deal? Does it affect other people? What's others' experiences of that?
Well, both my daughter-in-laws are ER nurses. So, and my one daughter-in-law is a 7733. And what I am in awe of with this, and I realize we're talking about vulnerabilities here, but for me, the idea that you're consciously aware of whether you're or not you're being emotional is amazing to me. I've had to work on that. I'd say that because I'm the 7, the improvise causes me to want to leap quicker, and I really do see that about them. And in fact, I cut my finger really badly a few years ago, and my daughter, I said, wow, she was just like giving me orders, do this, put your arm up, do this. And I'm like, wow, it really hurts. Where's the sympathy here? She says, I can't be sympathy right now. You want me to work on you. You don't want me to be emotional. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so amazing that you have a choice. That I'm in awe of, honestly.
And then Pam, once it stopped bleeding, what happened? Did you see an emotional side at some point somewhere from your daughter-in-law or not?
No, she is so unflappable. It's amazing to me. And she's the most loving. You could never say a bad word about her. She is the most loving, amazing person. But she just has this quiet, really calm state all the time. This has really helped me having ID and understanding about my daughter-in-laws, because I can take a step back and say, oh, they're just really processing or they're thinking, and maybe the next day I'll ask them about something.
I think it's really interesting. There's a couple of things here. So I think that it's important to understand that this is probably how we land, but I don't know, from my perspective, I have to talk myself out of not like having to calm down, because people around you may not be calm. So if there's chaos going on, you've really got to actually just go, okay, drama's not going to help right now. So it's almost this self-talk where you've got, because you know people depend on you. And, you know, one of the points you've made there, Paul, is absorbing other people's stress. So I actually feel that we do feel empathy quite a lot, but I always feel that people around me are depending on me to actually calm the situation down. So for me, the bigger piece there is, and I don't know if it's a vulnerability, but well, it is, because I feel like I take on other people's stress because I'm overly empathetic about things. So yeah, Amanda, I don't know if that resonates for you. Like, I know you sort of said before that you need to think about it, but I think in the moment we tend to sort of want to calm ourselves down.
Yeah, in the moment, I sometimes actually am not emotional. I actually am not feeling it. I'm like, there's no space for feeling right now. This person needs me to be calm and listen and give my time and maybe help solve a problem and whatever it is. Like I'm taking it all in. I know I am unconsciously, and I will think about it and I'll process and I'll feel later. But right now, there's already someone here that is taking the emotion of it and that needs me to remain calm and logical and rational. So it's almost like I can't feel it right there in the moment. I don't know.
I think what I'm saying is we actually do feel it, but what we feel is that they need us to be calm and rational, and that there's no time. So it's not that it's just almost one overtakes the other. Because I know that I can be really empathetic, but it's no help if the two of you in this black hole that you.
But it is. It is. It is. I'm just gonna say it is help if you're like being rational and thinking about it. It feels like you don't really care. And most of my avoid improvise friends are amazingly empathetic, so I don't experience them as that way, but
Thanks,
I think
Ilona.
people I don't know, maybe
good comment.
people I don't know, like, because I know, like, Vicky is really empathetic. Like, I just know she's super empathetic. But there are people where I'm like, does this matter to you? Are you getting what? Why aren't you? What's happening?
Eat your breakfast.
But I think there's a real point here, though, about the humanness of the avoid improvisers. They feel it, but the empathy is what the other person feels in response to how you're coming across to them. And that doesn't mean they feel the empathy from you. That doesn't mean you don't have emotion. You have the emotion, but you're consciously or instinctively turning it off so that you can be your, non-emotional self in that otherwise dramatic moment. But therefore there is an issue here on empathy, that the other person in that moment doesn't necessarily feel it from you. Depending on which way you flick the switch, so it would be something that I think, like for all of the different instincts here, the awareness of it would maybe allow you to regulate it a little differently to its natural state, and being aware of how your instincts then land on someone else. Because what I'm hearing from this, and it would make sense to me, is you feel it deeply, but it doesn't mean other people feel that back from you empathetically. That's huge, because there's a judgment that people then make or experience about you. But the other part that's really huge, and what we're seeing in the world, is that emotion's left churning in you somewhere, and that you do care deeply, and that's causing havoc out there in the world right now, called mental health, in so many cases where people are left to deal with stuff when everyone else has moved on. I think there's a huge piece here.
One question though, for people who are avoid improvise, yes, in moments of high tension, high situation, they may just feel like plastic with no emotions, right? But when the situation is normal, do they do something that help create connections?
Great question. Great question, Hitesh. I'm really curious what people would answer with that.
I think for me, for people that don't know me well or don't, are not close friends and family, they might think I'm not empathetic, but the people that know me really well and really close friends know how much I care, and I suffer with them, and I'll think it through, and I'll come back and talk about it, and I'll do everything in my power to help that person in whatever way and however long it takes. They can feel that, and they know that. But if it was just one interaction I had with someone that I'm not going to have contact again, then yeah, they might not have a chance to see that side of me. So yeah.
So I'm assuming circle of trust people are different, and they may see your other side of the behavior, but whoever is not in circle of trust will always see what is written here, right?
Yep.
Potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's where you're in a transaction with someone, they're not going to see it. Like when I hear Alona say before that she can see in Vicky, you know, someone who's really empathetic, but you're in a relationship with Vicky, like you get to experience the journey of Vicky. So, and you know, I'm saying that meaning Vicky in inverted commas, whether it's Vicky, Amanda, whoever is the avoid improvise person. And so because you see the follow through emotion after they've processed it, you get to see the full spectrum and the emotion return. But if someone's in a moment with you, and even that person in the relationship with you in that moment, they may not experience the empathy because you're processing and trying to be calm and sensible about it, and you know, stop the bleeding. To Pam's point, you're not focused on all of the feeling element. As she said, there's no time for feelings right now. We've got to stop the bleeding. You know. And a lot of people in those situations, I'm thinking of a doctor in ER years ago. I was working at Sutherland Hospital, and there was this doctor there that was a jerk. Everyone hated him. Everyone talked about his bad bedside manner. So me being me thought, well, I'll try and, you know, change the guy and help him understand how he's coming across. And he said, Paul, like, what do people want? They want me to be nice to them, or do they want to live? And I'm like, well, they're not mutually exclusive, John. You know, you can be both. He's like, they want to live. That's where I focus. I don't care whether I'm a nice guy. Like I'm not there to be a nice guy. I'm there to save lives. And it was just so typical. I you know, I know a bunch of paramedics, and I'm thinking of several of them right now, and they're like, in the moment, no one wants me or cares about me being a nice guy. They just want to live, or they want to be out of pain. That's my focus.
That sounds like something Authenticate would say, not an avoid of improvise. Like
Well,
their purpose there.
Maybe both, right?
Yeah. Maybe
Oh,
I took my
yeah.
dog in for surgery, and the vet there said, the surgeon's really good, but he's not going to talk to you. Like, he's not going to we'll do that. We'll make you feel better or whatever. He's not going to talk to you. I was like, fine.
So guys, unfortunately, yet again, we're at the top of the hour. These conversations could go for a lot more, but this has been a really interesting topic. And no matter what your ID, I'm sure there's elements here that just bring to bear, no matter what our intentions, our way of doing things, depending on who we're doing it with, can either land well or not connect as easily. And just to be always aware of how we come across and what other people might need in that moment, I think is really important. So thank you for the sharing. I'll adjust the slides, send them out later, and look forward to seeing you on our next call next month when we have a new topic, which is about giving feedback to people. Is going to be the topic of how to give especially sensitive feedback. That will be the theme for our May webinars. So until then, stay in stride. Thanks for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. Bye, everybody.